What if a single glass could collapse a nation? 9:15 p.m. The chandelier above flickered with diplomatic calm. Silver cutlery gleamed under the amber light. Jazz notes from a live quartet drifted like silk across the hall. But Trayor's hand froze over the fork, not from hesitation, but precision. A faint, metallic scent hit his nostrils. Sharp, unnatural, a scent he knew too well. Within a heartbeat, the opulent room transformed. The pretense dissolved. The real dinner had just begun, and it wasn't about the food. Across from him sat the EU envoy, posture relaxed, fingers interlocked as if reciting lines rehearsed 1,000 times. His expression? Tranquil. But Trayor saw the shimmer in his cufflinks, a flash too deliberate, too well-timed, a signal. Trayor's gaze flicked toward the stemmed glass, placed a few centimeters closer to his own plate than it should be. Sparkling water. Untouched, unsuspecting, but its proximity screamed danger. Cyanide, no question. His mind, trained in split-second survival, calculated everything. Location, Grand Seahell Hotel, Ouagadougou. Facade, Peace Summit. Reality, assassination in the making. He adjusted his posture subtly, shifting weight to his left foot, angling toward the nearest exit, an emergency door masked behind crimson drapes. Under the table, his fingers ghosted the hilt of a concealed dagger sewn into the lining of his jacket. The envoy raised his glass. "A toast," he said, voice smooth as silk, "to unity and trust." Trayor mirrored the motion, but his glass remained sealed to the table. Instead, his fingers wrapped it, not to sip, but to seize. His eyes locked onto the envoy's hand, a twitch beneath the cuff, sleeve inching up to reveal a faint bulge, a hidden syringe. He didn't wait. The table flipped, silverware clattered like thunder, crystals shattered. The poison glass slid across marble flooring, leaving a trail of betrayal behind. Gasps filled the room, chairs screeched. The illusion was broken. In that instant, every face around the diplomatic table revealed what they were hiding. Shock, panic, guilt. Trayor's stance was unmoved, spine straight, gaze cutting like a blade. Behind him, 3 security cameras quietly recorded, oblivious to the magnitude of what they had just captured. Across the room, the EU envoy stumbled, mask of calm cracking into pale alarm. The game was over, but it was only the beginning. By 2:47 a.m., encrypted signals flooded Traor's secure phone. Red alerts, drone deployment, NATO surveillance patterns tightening around the city perimeter. The summit wasn't a negotiation, it was a trap. And now that the first move had failed, the real war had started. Trayor disappeared into the night, but his actions in that dinner room had already rewritten the rules. Who really writes the script in a world of silent wars? Trayor didn't just see faces, he read them. Each wrinkle, every blink, the pressure behind a forced smile. They were data points. And that night, as chaos lingered in the embers of the flipped table, he replayed every detail. The EU envoy, the velvet knight, polished, educated, respected. But in Trayor's world, respect meant nothing without scrutiny. The envoy's background seemed impeccable. Degrees from European institutions, peace talks in the Middle East, environmental treaties in South Asia. But Trayor knew better. He had traced financial transfers through shell corporations. A pattern of strategic instability followed every summit the envoy had touched. Beneath the silk tie and diplomatic charm, a strategist of silent domination. He didn't command armies, he rewrote terms. His cufflinks, too ornate for this setting, bore the logo of Peregrine, a known front for covert financial manipulation. Trayor had intercepted chatter weeks earlier. The envoy's trip to Ouagadougou was not just symbolic, it was surgical. The IMF delegation, numbers with fangs. 3 delegates sat in that same room, cloaked in spreadsheets and economic lingo. They offered a bailout, $21 billion, but the fine print? Total privatization of the national grid. Oversight from foreign auditors, long to control over national tax reform. A golden leash, Trayor once called it. The lead financier, a Frenchman named Vaillancourt, was known in intelligence circles as the accountant of collapse. Where he went, state industries withered. Where he signed, Sovereignty died, line by line. Trayor remembered how his fingers tapped a steady rhythm on the polished oak table, not in boredom, but in calculation. A rhythm his informants were trained to read. Each tap sent a signal: watch their eyes. Log reactions: prepare for deviation. The informants, ghosts in uniform, while the elite dined upstairs. Ghosts moved below. In the hotel's boiler room, a kitchen worker, codenamed Silence, transmitted low-frequency recordings of dinner table conversations through the building's electrical wiring. In the parking garage, a janitor with a drone jamming device made sure no foreign optics got a clear feed. At the rooftop, a waiter-turned-agent manually redirected the building's external surveillance system, rerouting all external data feeds through Trayor's secure channel. They weren't soldiers, they were storytellers of the unseen, and Trayor was their editor, a culture under siege. Ouagadougou once prided itself on hospitality, heritage, and harmony. The Grand Sea Hell Hotel itself was an icon. Carved wood panels, murals of ancestral warriors, a piano bar that once played lullabies of independence. Now, it was a battleground painted in bureaucracy. Trayor couldn't ignore the irony. African rhythms replaced by Western jazz. Traditional dishes substituted with imported delicacies. The national anthem skipped at the event for time constraints. The city was being rewritten, line by line, in the languages of foreign power. And it wasn't just the walls or the food. It was the people. A waitress whispered, "They renamed my street after a tech investor." A driver grumbled, "We used to build, now we sign contracts for others to build." Trayor recorded these voices, not just for evidence, but for memory. The map beneath the table. By midnight, Trayor wasn't thinking about cyanide anymore. He was thinking of tunnel blueprints, of surveillance blind spots, of power grids rerouted through development partnerships. He laid it out in his head. Who funded the envoy? European energy conglomerates. Who benefited from the IMF terms? Offshore resource extractors. Who built the surveillance system in Ouagadougou's new government buildings? A private security firm tied to foreign intelligence. Every line connected. He saw it all. A silent occupation, not with tanks or troops, but with contracts and clauses. How do you assassinate a country? Not with bullets, but with contracts, cameras, and compromise. At 3:12 a.m., the city of Ouagadougou looked asleep, but Trayor was already 3 steps ahead. Inside a makeshift command hub nestled beneath a shuttered bookstore, his eyes darted across a dozen monitors. Infrared drone feeds, intercepted comms, GPS traces. The pretense was over. The dinner had not just been an attempted poisoning. It had been a prelude to occupation. The drones above, the traps below. 12 surveillance drones painted slow spirals over Ouagadougou's skies. Officially, NATO security reinforcement. Reality, mapping resistance. Trayor analyzed the rotation patterns. Too precise, too coordinated. These weren't just for protection, they were hunting, with fingers moving at blistering speed. He rerouted booster towers in Sector 7, feeding the drones phantom coordinates. Within seconds, the skies above Ouagadougou's outskirts went blind. Mission 1. Buy time. Succeed. Then came the encrypted pings. A convoy, 16 vehicles, was inbound from Koudougou-Boasso Highway. The target? The heart of Ouagadougou's resistance, and Trayor himself. He smiled grimly. They were coming. He'd be waiting. The convoy trap. At 4:33 a.m., engines roared through the southern artery of the city. But as the first vehicle crossed marker point Delta 22, it met a quiet enemy. Spike strips deployed from beneath storm grates. No shots fired. No alarms, just the crunch of certainty. Tires shredded. Vehicles skidded. Orders screamed across radios. Mercenaries jumped out. Some ex-special forces, others mere guns for hire. But all of them shared one fatal flaw. They didn't realize Trayor had already predicted their every move. Within 90 seconds, communications were jammed. An operative reached for a fail-safe detonator. Trayor had already intercepted its frequency. The charge disarmed. Above, drones captured cinematic footage of chaos unraveling. On the ground, Trayor circled the convoy in a silent black SUV, like a panther watching prey tire themselves out. He issued one command: surrender, now. There was no debate. The mercenaries folded. Each one was disarmed, restrained, and catalogued. Digital files from their trucks, payment logs, route plans, and coded voice memos were seized. They revealed what Trayor had feared. The convoy wasn't rogue. It was sanctioned by external interests, shadow financiers, proxy wars, and the convoy was just Act 2. The IMF summit collapsed. Midnight before the convoy's arrival, Trayor had already faced another battlefield, not with rifles but rhetoric. A closed-door summit between the Ouagadougou interim government and IMF emissaries had offered a glittering future. $21 billion in aid, economic stability, fast-tracked integration into global markets. But Trayor sat at the head of the table, unmoving, arms crossed, eyes locked. He'd seen the real documents. Stability meant foreign oversight. Aid meant auctioning national industries. Partnership meant submission. The emissaries tried charm. They tried pressure. They even tried to appeal to legacy. "You could make history," one whispered. Trayor leaned forward, fingers tapping once on the polished oak. Then, with a voice that cut like obsidian, "History doesn't need another traitor." The summit unraveled instantly. Files withdrawn, contracts pulled, the financiers left empty-handed, their digital logs silently copied by Trayor's informants on the way out. The $21 billion vanished, but so did the illusion of benevolence. The unmasking. By 5:02 a.m., the city's energy grid flickered, not from failure, but from control. Trayor's counter-network had quietly taken over local infrastructure. News broadcasts shifted. Suddenly, across Ouagadougou, citizens saw drone footage of the convoy collapse, leaked IMF clauses, and grainy images from the poison dinner. The people watched, and something ancient stirred. Awareness. This wasn't just Trayor's war anymore. What happens after the truth explodes? Not silence, but a war of narratives. 6:08 a.m. The sun hadn't yet breached Ouagadougou's skyline, but the city was already burning, not with fire, but with questions. Every screen flickered, every phone buzzed, every whisper in alleyways turned into arguments in cafes. What had just happened? Who betrayed whom? And why did no one see it coming? The streets react. People had gone to sleep thinking their leaders were hosting a peace summit. They awoke to leaked footage of a dinner gone wrong, a poisoned glass, and the faces of foreign delegates recoiling in panic. The footage spread faster than any official could control. On forums, in group chats, on burner Twitter accounts, everyone was dissecting it. Did you see the envoy's wrist? There's a syringe. Trayor never touched the glass. Smart. So smart. Wait, why were NATO drones flying over our markets last night? The people weren't angry. They were electrified. For the first time, they saw what Trayor had always seen. Their country wasn't being governed, it was being gamed. The political collapse begins. By 8 a.m., city council chambers filled with a tension that made skin prickle. Trayor walked in, not as an agent, not as a soldier, but as the executioner of truth. 22 officials were summoned, one by one. Each faced a sealed dossier, stamped with evident emails linking them to external consulting firms, voice logs promising favors in exchange for votes, contracts showing illegal backdoor amendments to national infrastructure deals. Trayor didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply asked, "Do you deny this?" None could answer. Each signed their resignation. Access cards deactivated. Terminals scrubbed. As they exited the chambers, some ashamed, some defiant, new officials were already seated, vetted, briefed, ready. Ouagadougou's government didn't collapse. It shed its skin. The global response. Foreign embassies issued cautious statements. The IMF paused disbursement. NATO issued silence, the loudest confession. But Trayor knew better. He intercepted satellite movements, rerouted surveillance data, mapped suspicious flights. He didn't just play defensive, he hunted. At 11:18 a.m., his team discovered a hidden hatch beneath the UN logistics compound. A trap door no diplomat admitted existed. What lay beneath? A maze of tunnels, supply crates, encrypted laptops and crates bearing non-African insignias. Weapons, wiretaps, escape routes. The UN staff above claimed ignorance. Trayor didn't argue, he documented. Every corridor photographed, every crate catalogued, every device copied. The tunnels weren't just escape routes, they were veins of foreign influence, pulsing silently beneath Ouagadougou's soil for years. Trayor had now ripped them open. Personal fallout, loyalty and sacrifice. But not every cost was political. In the chaos, silence, Trayor's informant from the hotel kitchen was found, tortured, dumped outside the city gates. No traces, no note, only a ring one Trayor had given her for passing messages in plain sight. He picked it up with bare hands, held it against the sunrise. Some wars don't have medals, only graves. Trayor didn't flinch. He tightened his network. For every life lost, he would bring down 3 more nodes of the machine. And the people saw it. They painted Silence's name on murals. They whispered her codes into protests. She became a symbol, not of death, but of awakening. What if victory doesn't look like a flag raised, but like silence finally broken? By 12:30 p.m., the final tunnel was sealed. Trayor stood alone beneath the UN compound, staring into the last corridor. Crates cleared, servers shut down, cables cut. There were no more enemies in sight, but what haunted him now weren't the soldiers or diplomats. It was the memory of what almost happened, and how close they came to losing everything without firing a shot. The lessons etched in steel and dust. The story of Ouagadougou had always been told in shadows. Now it screamed in daylight. Trayor had uncovered financial plots disguised as foreign aid, intelligence operations masquerading as development projects, government betrayal sealed in legalese, not bullets. The biggest lesson? Occupation doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a suit and carries a spreadsheet. Trayor secret communications, tunnel maps, contract revisions, drone movement patterns. He didn't release them all at once. He released them strategically. Each leak targeted a node of control, a media outlet, a law firm, an offshore account, like surgical cuts in the body of a hidden empire. People began to connect the dots. The IMF clause that would have privatized the water supply? Rejected. The energy contract favoring a foreign conglomerate? Cancelled. The city street, renamed after a European CEO, returned to its original name. Trayor didn't just stop a coup. He rebooted a country, the legacy, structures and symbols. Some things were lost. Some could never be rebuilt. But Trayor ensured something far more powerful remained. Digital Sovereignty Office, a task force built from cybersecurity operatives, street hackers, and loyal civil servants. Mandate: protect Ouagadougou's digital infrastructure from silent incursions. Motto: no lines left unwatched. People's Archive, a public, unedited, searchable database of all declassified operations uncovered, hosted on blockchain. Trayor's idea. Let the people be the historians, not the victors. The Black Monument, erected at the city's center, matte steel carved with 22 lines, one for each official removed during the purge. Not a monument to shame, but to warning. A phrase etched at the base: don't wait for permission to say no. Reflections on culture and identity. Ouagadougou for decades had worn the mask of developing nation. Now it was no longer a silent participant. Its people remembered the music once silenced by diplomatic formalities, the stories replaced by contracts, the traditions overwritten by imported protocol. Post-crisis, Trayor commissioned oral history recordings from elders, street vendors, teachers, to preserve what had been slowly erased. Because reclaiming sovereignty wasn't just about borders, it was about voice. The world watches back. Foreign powers didn't retaliate, not directly. They rebranded, they replaced ambassadors. They called Trayor radical, unpredictable, even dangerous, but they never called him wrong. Some even adopted his protocols, a quiet acknowledgement that he was simply ahead. Trayor never sought praise, he sought clarity. And now, Ouagadougou was no longer a pawn, it was a player, awake, alert, and armored in truth. Victory ends a battle, but who decides when the war is over? 8:47 a.m. The council chamber lights dimmed. Trayor stood alone, no enemy across the table, no contract slid toward him, no glass filled with poison waiting to be touched. But his eyes scanned the room as if something still lurked, because Trayor knew the deepest threats don't knock, they seep. A moment of stillness. The documents were signed. The tunnels were mapped. The traitors were gone. But Traor's mind didn't rest. He reviewed every sealed USB, every drone log, every whispered code passed during the blackout hours. And one detail still itched like unfinished code. A name, repeated across 3 separate intelligence briefings. Redacted, marked Asset B53, Operative Unknown. He hadn't uncovered everything. He'd won this chapter, but somewhere, in a city, a satellite feed, a seemingly friendly embassy, Asset B53 was still active. The weight of knowing. Outside, the streets of Ouagadougou bustled with life. Vendors opened stalls. Children returned to school. A jazz quartet played at the Grand Sea, the same spot where it all began. Trayor walked past the monument, fingers brushing the 22 engraved lines. A passerby nodded. No words exchanged. But the look said it all. We saw. We remember. We stand. But even as peace returned, Trayor left his bags half-packed. The next threat wouldn't announce itself. It would creep in contracts again, in new alliances, in smiling faces. Because truth isn't a victory, it's a discipline. And Trayor? He had chosen to stay ready. A final whisper to the viewer. You followed Trayor through the banquet hall, the dark alleys, the boardrooms, the tunnels, and the aftermath. But this isn't just his story, it's a mirror. Because every country, every system, every creator faces a version of this silent war. Between surface and substance, between truth and transaction, between comfort and vigilance. And the real question is,